Well, millions of dollars are confiscated in drug busts every year in the United States. So far this year, the Crosse Police Department has already seized at least $30,000. So what exactly happens to all that money? Well, News 8's Brittany Schmidt has the answer in tonight's News 8 Investigates Follow the Drug Money report.
Martha, it's being called the war on drugs for a reason. There seems to be an endless supply when it comes to illegal drugs. In 2014, a report by the Office of National Drug Control Policy estimated that between 2000 and 2010, Americans spent about $100 billion every year on 4 major illegal drugs. In 2015, the Crosse Police Department arrested 53 people and seized more than $31,000 in drug money. Now, that may not look like anything compared to the billions of dollars being exchanged in the illegal drug market every year, but local law enforcement officials say it's not about the money, but about getting the drug dealer off the streets.
We sit in an area that's a target-rich environment for drug dealers. We're right between Minneapolis, St. Paul, and Chicago and Milwaukee, and the interstates flow through here, so it allows for them to be very, very mobile. I'm asked every day if it's getting worse or if the drugs are worse, and my answer to both those questions is yes.
Tom Johnson with the West Central MEG unit says La Crosse is no different than much of the nation when it comes to the drug problem.
I don't talk about the war anymore because there's no war on drugs. It's just an everyday battle.
But those small battles in the drug world can take weeks, months.
It takes a lot of patience.
Even years to execute.
A La Crosse woman out on bond for drug charges is arrested again this week for selling meth.
An investigation into a theft complaint leads La Crosse police to a major drug bust.
Well, another traffic stop puts a dent into the area's drug supply.
Records from the La Crosse Police Department show between January 1st and March 31st of this year, police have completed almost 24 drug busts, seizing more than $13,000 in drug money. That's not including the most recent arrest of Kajua Vu of La Crosse last month, where police found more than $20,000 in one bust.
The Kajua Vu case is an example where there was a significant amount of cash present and a significant amount of product that they were selling.
If you combine the money already seized in just 4 months, it's more than $33,000. Compare that to the $31,000 confiscated in all of last year. So what exactly happens to all that seized drug money?
If we come in with a stack of money, that money would get counted with a witness. Then each package you can see is packaged with our evidence tape, and that we make sure the edges of the envelopes are all sealed and taped up to preserve the integrity of the evidence inside.
Once the money is packaged correctly, it gets logged into the computerized system and stored away.
The officers, when they bring it in from the field, will temporarily store it in one of the lockers in the hallway. Then our evidence staff will empty those lockers, log all the information into our permanent record system, and document the date and time that they brought it in, and they create a running log of any time that evidence is brought in and out of our system.
The money remains in the evidence locker until the court case involving it is closed. With the money and drugs in hand, now it's on to the courts.
We have a conversation to determine first how much it is and if it would be beneficial to proceed with the civil forfeiture action to forfeit the money.
La Crosse County Deputy District Attorney Brian Barton says in Wisconsin, a civil forfeiture action allows the arresting agency to take assets, including money, from people who are involved in illegal activity like drug dealing.
I represent the state. I have to file a complaint and a summons. We have to serve that summons and complaint on the defendant, which we usually will try to do right at the preliminary hearing, because we have 30 days to file that. Then it goes through the civil court proceeding at that point.
Then Barton works on building his case against the alleged drug dealer. This is where Barton says the police department's investigation can make or break the case.
A case is only as good as the facts, we rely heavily on law enforcement, on the investigators to provide those facts.
The burden of proof is on us to prove that money was made by criminal activity or by drug dealing.
Melby says with every piece of evidence, the arresting officer has to write a report detailing the evidence taken from the drug bust.
If the individual is found with large quantity of money and they don't have a job and they don't have any other income that we were able to locate, we're going to deem all those proceeds or cash contraband or proceeds from illegal drug drug sales.
Barton says then it's up to the alleged drug dealer to prove that the money taken by police isn't drug money.
In my experience, very few occasions they've been able to persuade a judge of that.
If the judge rules the money is drug money, the arresting police department, in this case La Crosse, turns the money over to the West Central Meg Unit, a 17-agency drug enforcement task force.
We take those forfeited funds, put them in our account, and then we divide it out or use it appropriately for equipment, cars, some of the obviously day-to-day expenses that it takes to run the Meg unit.
But under state law, the Meg unit doesn't get to keep 100% of the money deemed forfeited by the court.
The Wisconsin statutes call for the sharing of those funds.
If the amount of money forfeited is over $2,000, 50% of it has to be given to the Wisconsin State School Fund. Then the remaining 50% will go to the West Central Meg unit. Here's how the money was distributed in 2015. The Meg unit spent about $5,000 on drug test kits, more than $3,000 on electronic surveillance, and between $10,000 and $15,000 on vehicles and confidential drug buys. But that doesn't mean the Meg unit or police departments rely on or budget for forfeited drug money.
We don't schedule a traffic stop or schedule activities in that investigation based on the fact that we think that we could get some money. That's just not the way it works.
Sometimes you'll just arrest them and they'll have, a significant amount of product but very little cash. So there's no way to really truly plan this out to make sure that you end up having a certain amount of money from drug arrests every year.
You get that big chunk of drugs off the street. Is that not our goal too?
There may never be a ceasefire when it comes to the war on drug dealers in the area.
Because they're out there. There are people hauling tons and tons of cash.
And it may seem like law enforcement agencies are spending way too much money on drug enforcement. But when it comes to a battle over lives, that is just something they will never surrender to.
It's tragedies when you find people laying in alleys that are dead of overdoses. These are people's children, their sisters, their brothers to people in the community.
We have to make sure that these drug dealers realize that they're not welcome here. We don't want them here.
Unit started back in 1988, and Johnson says he is happy to see it is still around despite major budget cuts. In the early 2000s, the Meg unit got between $150,000 and $180,000 from the federal government every year to carry out drug investigations and reimburse overtime for local agencies. Now they are operating on $39,000, so the Meg unit has had to cut back on its financial assistance to partnering agencies, but those agencies decided to step up and absorb those extra costs.
So is the Meg unit getting any financial help from anywhere else?
They are. For the last 2 years, the Ho-Chunk Nation has donated about $50,000 a year to the Meg unit to support the effort, and Johnson says the organization plans to renew that $50,000 again this year.
All right, thanks a lot, Brittany, for that report tonight.